Top choices for the 2028 Dem-Pres nominee. You have a leader, but it's not really a clear leader.
So all of that leads you to potentially, let's say, being more in the Democrat camp, which if you were going to run, if somebody was going to run for president, that's the place to go, because check out these numbers from CNN.
Sure. They're all running, and this is just a downright clown car at this point on the Democratic side. I mean, just take a look here. Top choices for the 2028 Dem-Pres nominee. You have a leader, but it's not really a clear leader. It's within the margin of error. You have Newsom at 19%. Then you have former Vice President Kamala Harris at 18%. Quite a weak number for her, given that, of course, she was the nominee last time around. Pete Buttigieg, who, of course, has run before, 13%. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 12%. This is just a total clown car. It is a total mess. There is no clear front runner at this particular point on the Democratic side.
No. So when I watch that, to me, that makes more of a rationale for why, if you were ever going to run, or if anyone is thinking about running, you run as a Democrat, because they've got nobody. Those ideas are thin. Like, it's just an easy group to punch through.
I agree.
Putting aside whether I agree with you or not on the other stuff, I don't want to get lost in all of that.
Sure.
We could do that some other time.
Right.
But that makes sense. Like, wow, it's a pretty freaking weak field. If you were doing if there's an ESPN version of this, it's like, man, that's a team.
Listen, here's the deal. You know, I've told people this on many, many occasions. I'm not an aficionado on the issues. There's a lot more that I have to learn. I can be corrected at the drop of a hat, I'm quite sure. I'm a conscientious observer. I'm an American citizen. I'm a voter. Who cares? I've been very blessed and successful to have the career that I have, and I ain't about to give up this money and what I've achieved to run for the presidency of the United States. That is where I come in. But it is tempting when I see those as the candidates, because I don't believe any of them have a chance of winning. We can go down the list. Gavin Newsom. Here you are. And we saw what you just said, whether people believe it or not, or, you know, because you got folks on the left trying to defend them, fine. Crime, homelessness, affordability, environment, debt in California, please. You got to convince me. Oh, so you want us to let you run the country, but we see what's happening in California. Good luck with that. Kamala Harris, that's where you come from. You didn't even want to run for the governor's seat in California. You should have been able to win that one. You didn't want that. Okay, we saw what happened during the election. You had 107 days. Biden put you at a disadvantage. That's all true. But your interview on The View sealed your fate. When they asked you, is there anything that you would do differently than Biden? You were like, no, I can't think of anything. Nobody's letting that go. And back to Gavin Newsom. Everybody talked about, you need to move to the center to some degree. Look at it that way. What do? 2 weeks later, you're seen on TV talking about when it comes to transgenders, transitioning from male to female, even if they're children, you really have no problem with that, with them doing such a thing without parental consent. I've said this to numerous people who would listen. If my child is underage, you can't come to my child to tell my child to walk down the street to the store without my permission. How in God's name you think you can do something that serious without parental consent?
We used to not let them go to a PG-13
Are you kidding me? That is just utterly ridiculous. That kind of soundbite is going to be held against them. So I think that those two right there, they hurt themselves immensely. And I don't think the Democrats wanted Kamala Harris. And I think that has a lot to do, you know, as you saw her write in her book, she didn't feel like she was completely supported. So how you going to suddenly get the support for 2028 if you could get in 2024? That ain't going to work. Pete Buttigieg, as I said on Real Time with Bill Maher, he doesn't move us.
Yeah.
He just doesn't move us. It's just that simple.
All right, if you follow politics, you know everyone's got an opinion. Your group chats the pundits, and yes, even me. But on Polymarket, you get something better. Well, maybe not than me, but it's still pretty good. Real odds on what's actually likely to happen. Polymarket is a prediction market where people trade on real events, elections, debates, policy moves, and more. And it doesn't stop at politics. You'll find markets on the economy, tech, sports, pop culture, and even random internet moments that blow up for a week. It's live, transparent, and gives you a legit vibe check on what people really think. You've definitely heard about Polymarket before, so take a second and check it out. Head on over to polymarket.com right now.
All right, and then you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. I respect her. I respect her passion. I respect what she tries to do for her constituency in the Bronx, New York. That clip of her in Munich was one of the most embarrassing videos we may have seen.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
Listen, when Mitch McConnell, the former Senate Majority Leader, froze, ladies and gentlemen, we were wondering whether or not he had a stroke. We know he's old. We know there are health issues. That is a vibrant young lady. That is AOC.
Yeah.
Okay? That was not a health issue. You were not prepared. You did not know what you were talking about, and the world saw it. Now, if they had walked up to you on center stage, if they had walked up to you while you walking the streets of the Bronx and just stuck a camera and a microphone in your face and you were caught off guard, that would be different. No, you flew across the world. You flew across the ocean to attend this conference.
To a conference
You understand?
specializing in that.
Specializing in that.
Yeah.
And that was your answer. You can't get around that, and the Republicans are going to have a field day playing that at every turn. Do I believe she has a shot to win the Senate seat over Chuck Schumer down the line? Yes. But her as a world figure, nah. They're going to hold that against her forever.
What is it that you respect about her? Because I've heard you say that before. And
I'm just talking.
People do this with Newsom a lot too. Like, he's wrong on everything, but I respect him.
No, what we're saying is, most of the time, everybody ain't into the weeds like somebody like you are. That's why when you talk to somebody like you and others, you got to know what you're talking about or admit that you don't.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Which you, Megyn Kelly, a bunch of others. I respect everybody because it's like, you got to know your stuff. And if you don't know, admit you know. Don't walk around lying and trying to hide like you know something you don't know.
Yeah.
So I get that part. But when we talk about respecting somebody, what we're saying is you're listening to policies, you're listening to people spew their rhetoric about whatever their beliefs are, whatever their ideology is, etc. And you see the passion and the fervor and the fight that they have within themselves to go after the opposite side, trying to derail what we may perceive as them striving to do in the best interests of our community. That's all we mean by that, okay? When you get into the weeds of policy and what have you, yeah, it could be a bit challenging because sometimes what they're saying may not make any sense when you really, really go through it.
Right. So you respect that she's playing, in essence. I respect playing in a game and she's playing it.
Well, I don't know that she doesn't know. I know she didn't know that day.
Yeah.
But other times I've seen her speaking on Capitol Hill, she didn't seem ignorant and oblivious to the issues. She had her position and she would try to push it and she would attack the opposition, but she didn't seem lost like she did in Munich. I've never seen her like that before. That's the first time I ever saw her and she looked completely lost. Now, I'm not watching a whole bunch of clips and footages of her, so I'm just speaking based off of the experience of me, what I've seen, but she's never looked like that.